All right, welcome everyone. My name is Che. I am the program manager here at Big Bear Retreat Center. And tonight we will be sitting with Trudy and Lisa, who will be offering a retreat on the grounds November 13th to November 17th called Dharma of Desire. So tonight, our intention is to give folks a chance to kind of understand the intention and the inspiration for the retreat, and also hear a little bit about how Lisa and Trudy both came to the Dharma and what keeps them sort of moving with and in the Dharma, and maybe some of the things that they're focusing on in their own practices right now. So, and just a little bit of a note for those of you who are on. Um, I mentioned as you entered that this will be live streamed. It is currently live streaming now. We are also recording it. So please move in a way that feels comfortable and good for you in terms of your camera visibility. For the primary time of the recording, the camera will be either on myself or on Trudy and Lisa. If you decide to pop in and ask a question, I do usually spotlight folks also alongside one of the teachers or alongside the teachers. But if you don't feel comfortable being seen, that's totally fine. You can still unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can send the question to me in the chat and I will read it aloud on your behalf. All right, so let us go ahead and get started. Trudy and Lisa, you're ready?
Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So the first question, is there a specific moment in your life that brought you to the Dharma?
Who's going first?
Do you want to rock, paper, scissors for it?
Well, I have a very specific moment, so I know exactly what brought me to the Dharma. So I can start. Um, well, I was in high school and 16, and my high school offered kind of an elective course on Zen Buddhism, and I was had some interest in Hinduism and yoga, and thought this could be pretty cool. And I took the course. And during that course, there were some words of the Buddha that absolutely penetrated my heart. And it was the teaching on impermanence and how everything that has the nature to arise will pass away. And the reason it meant so much to me is because at that very moment, I was dealing with the loss of both of my parents, and I didn't understand at 16 how that could be happening. And that teaching on impermanence helped it move out of it just being about me. It's like, this is life. This was a difficult time for me, extremely difficult, but there was something in those words that touched me in a way that helped me to feel that it wasn't just me, that we all lose something, that this life is inevitably going to lead to loss. And that actually gave my heart a little bit of peace. And while I still had a long road to travel in terms of grief and everything I was dealing with, that really put me on the path. And while I wasn't ready to meditate yet, I really began studying. And when I was ready to meditate, I did. And that's where my starting point was for the Dharma. So.
That's a very specific starting point, Lisa. I don't have that. I don't have a specific starting point, but I had a series of experiences, really culminating in I was a single mom and my daughter was 2.5 and she almost died from spinal meningitis. She was in the hospital for 2 months. It was a very grueling experience, very much not like losing your parents in high school, but I had this sort of mystical experience because I was, I guess, pushed against the wall and was suffering a lot because I didn't know if she would live or die for quite a while. And and it made me curious. And I was just like, there must be people who understand this. And so when she got better, I started looking. I went to I went to listen to yogis who said, do this mantra, eat artichokes. I just didn't, it didn't work for me. And then I was very fortunate because I have an old childhood friend, John Kabat-Zinn. And at that time, I was in my mid 20s, by then 25. And um, Larry Rosenberg was also a friend. And John and Larry had met this Korean Zen master who had come from Korea and he had been living in Providence, Rhode Island, repairing washing machines because he didn't really speak English very well. So he came to Cambridge to study, go to the summer school at Harvard. And um, he started a Zen center. Wherever he went, he started a Zen center. And that was the beginning of my practice. Uh, Larry and John had found him and they brought me to meet him and began to meditate with him. And he was a wonderful teacher. And I'm very grateful. And then I moved from Korean Zen to sit with the Vipassana folks. And as I said, I was a single mom. So whether I sat with the Zen people or the Vipassana people depended entirely on when I could get childcare, when I could get time off work, and when they were having a retreat. And so I went back and forth for a few years.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Those are, I think both really big, big things that, as you said, Trudy, Lisa's is very specific and also kind of like really internal and really deep in the heart. But then also too, yours, folks can really understand being in single parenthood and finding space and time and navigating that to really have intimate moments with themselves and
Yeah.
kind of find ways to fill their cup up. Lisa, do you find that the Dharma is what still keeps you sort of really grounded and moving through either any feelings or moments you have around the transition of your parents?
Before you answer, Lisa, I just want to welcome Sandy who arrived. And I don't see you. I saw you, Sandy. Now I just see your picture, but I want to just welcome you to the conversation. Yeah. Yeah. All yours, Lisa.
Okay. Yeah, I think the Dharma continues to be a refuge for me in terms of any kinds of uh, when I start to feel disconnected, when the emotions arise, anything that starts to lead me down that path where that kind of old suffering, something like that does stay with you your whole life when you lose in
Mhm.
childhood to that degree. But the Dharma is just it's such a refuge, just getting on the cushion and, letting my energy just settle and letting the mind kind of start to ease into the body and into the heart. And then there's such a spaciousness there. There's just that reliable refuge that every day, every time I sit, it's just that sinking into that spaciousness and that refuge that where the energy isn't here, it's embodied. And
Mhm.
there's just I
Mhm.
find out of that embodiment little insights pop up, and it's just like coming back into a wholeness in a sense, where the mind isn't just running around and spinning. So yes, it continues to be a great refuge for me, and it moves me out of that sense of I and mine, also that identification with whatever's going on for me, on a personal level. So there's that kind of spaciousness there as well. So absolutely, I think it's if I don't, it's just like every day, I just know that this place of refuge is so important for me. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lisa, for that so much. I appreciate it. I have a question that was sent in the chat, and the question is, What does someone coming to their first retreat need to know? I am considering joining these two teachers for their retreat next month and have never sat a retreat before, but have a daily practice.
If you have a daily practice, you can come sit the retreat. That you can do that. Um, because sustaining a daily practice is already huge. And I think what you need to know when you come to a retreat is that you're going to be safe and protected and taken care of, and that we're there for you. And if you struggle or you need to, if you need to take a break and go for a walk or anything, is you can do that. We're really there for you. I mean, Lisa and I are long-term meditators. It's always good to do a retreat, but we're not going to Big Bear to do our personal retreat. We're going to Big Bear to support you in your new practice. And I just think it's kind of thrilling to have somebody who hasn't sat a retreat before. You're a virgin and you get to come sit with us. So I don't think you should worry a bit. I mean, of course you will, because it's something new and we always get anxious when we start something new, or a little bit nervous anyway. But maybe Lisa she's good at specific things, but in general, I would just say trust that you're going to be able to make it your retreat. It's your retreat, and you can do it the way that works for you. And the schedule and it's all designed to support you. And there are always moments, you should know this ahead of time, when you wish you hadn't come because it's difficult. We all go through that. What am I doing? Why did I do this? I should have known, blah, blah, blah. The mind loves to, make comments about absolutely everything. Um, but yeah, Lisa, if you have anything to add, what I want you to know is it's your retreat.
Well, that's beautifully said. And I would just kind of echo that in the sense that already having a consistent practice already established will definitely serve you on this retreat. That's a wonderful, I mean, just such a support for coming in. It really makes a huge difference. And as Trudy said, if you need to take a walk, we're not going to be, this isn't the military, you can work with your rhythm and your capacity. And usually what happens is there's just that point where it just clicks. Something just clicks. And but there is an adjustment, but it's usually I'll hear from people after that first retreat and they'll say that really I'm so glad I did the whole thing, that I did this retreat, and it's made such an enormous difference in my life. So I so often hear that, that they're just so grateful once they've been through that first experience.
Yeah, it's a great support for your practice.
And I feel like that also sort of reflects and answers a bit of a question of who can attend to, if there's space for those who are coming to sit for the first time, there's space for those who have sat many times and whatever is in between. Um, I guess moving from that kind of inquiry and note and question, what inspired the focus of this retreat for both of you?
Lisa, you start. You've written about this topic.
I have. I have, and I don't remember the specifics when Trudy and I started talking about it, but I do know that we both were in agreement that working with desire and longing is something that isn't given a lot of focus or isn't given enough focus in the Dharma. It seems like that one is kind of pushed aside, even though their Buddha has plenty of teachings on tanha, which is craving, and chanda, which is healthy desire for awakening. But it just feels like that this area is something that's so universal to our experience. We all have longing, we all have desire. And how do we hold that? How do we actually work with that in a conscious way where we can find some deeper insight, connection? We can actually learn from it and not always just react to it. This can be like a doorway into the Dharma. So finding skillful ways of working with craving and desire and longing can really unfold a lot that's in our heart that maybe if we weren't paying so much attention, either pushing it away or reaching for something, then this intimacy, we can really get to know our hearts and perhaps what our hearts really need. Because I just think under a lot of craving and desire is actually something that is authentic. And if we can find it, it can actually be a support rather than a problem. And we learn how to embody that in our practice, really experience it.
Yeah, that's really nice, Lisa. It's really well said. Um, and I just want to address the occasional noise that Sandy, I explained before you came on that tonight is Rosh Hashanah and that I'm on my way to a dinner. So I'm in the car, and every once in a while Jack comes into the car, and you'll hear traffic noises when I mean, we're parked, so that it's safe and everything, but uh, we also have to end a little bit earlier than we had planned. And I don't think I told you that, Shay. I'm sorry about that. But just because we all didn't quite connect that tonight was Rosh Hashanah when we made this arrangement. So, in terms of, yeah, desire and longing, so much of the teaching that I got early on in my practice was how it's just a no-no. You shouldn't want things, and you shouldn't cling to things, and you shouldn't. It's attachment. It's going to get in the way of your practice. And well, depending on what you're clinging to and wanting, it can get in the way of your practice. Addictions to substances or things like that aren't very helpful in terms of keeping our minds clear and staying present with experience, which is what we're trying to learn to do. Um, but as Lisa said, that energy of wanting it's often underneath wanting the things like that are not very healthy, like overeating or I mean, I'm just using an example of what I often want to do, which is open the refrigerator, have a snack, distract myself, especially with something sweet or chocolatey. Um, wanting that and then indulging in that too much is not healthy. Some is fine, of course, but it's moderation. It really depends on what you're wanting and what you're longing for. And when Lisa talked about longing for awakening, I think we all long for feeling clearer, feeling unconfused, feeling that we know how to be with the experiences that we're having, that we know how to be around people who of all different kinds that we encounter in our life. I long for that. I long to be able to be at ease in my life in different contexts and with different people from all walks of life and who are very different from me, perhaps. I want to be comfortable. I want to learn how to be comfortable wherever I go. And I want to wake up to the things that get in the way of that too. So I just think this is a really interesting topic. And it's kind of pioneering of Lisa to write about it the way you have, because like I said, the sort of traditional way, a lot of our teachings come from a monastic setting. That's the Buddha also taught lay people, but the teachings for the monastics are very austere and are supporting them to be celibate and eat one meal a day and all the things that the monks and nuns do as in the Theravada tradition. And we are lay people. We have families. We have friends. We have work lives. We have, we just aren't in that kind of setting. So we can develop a different relationship to these things. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it a lot because it is about getting clear and getting more at ease with our relationship to ourselves and each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you both for those really nuanced answers. I think what came out of what you both shared that's really important to me is the opening and the connection that you're talking about, right? Because oftentimes I think when you use words such as desire or longing, I think they have people can leap to one connotation that is not necessarily going to be opening
Exactly.
or
Exactly.
allow you to really see what you're asking for internally and spiritually. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, I think with that, to kind of expand upon that, my next question would be, what would you say is the difference between exploring desire versus grasping or lusting after something?
Well, I would say, of course, when we grasp and we lust after something, a lot of times there's the action that we take. There's, I think in the Tibetan they call it the hook, and that's when that desire hooks you and you react and you go to the refrigerator, or you do whatever it is that hooks you into that action that isn't necessarily uh, the best action in that moment. And so in the case of exploring it, we're really coming to the actual felt sense, and we're not, rather than acting on it. So we're actually exploring what's really in the heart, and so it becomes an actual exploring of the felt sense of the longing of what's arising. So we're having enough stillness, enough presence to begin to get to know it. And a lot of times then our heart and our minds, our wisdom can reveal what we really need, and what's really underneath, what's really driving that. And I think a lot of times underneath there can be some very wholesome elements of just longing for, like Trudy talked about, like connection, and connection to others or to ourselves in a wholesome way, and then the longing to be more awake, to be more present in our lives. And I think, we can explore this in a way that it can really open it up to us by really looking at the arising. We'll do some practices that help us work with that, some compassion practices and embodiment practices that actually give us the space to hold longing and desire in presence and in compassion and in awareness.
And I have to say, some of my relationship to this question that you asked, Shay, and that you gave such a really beautiful answer to, Lisa, is sort of based on the life cycle. That there are different times in our lives. Like when I was young, I lusted after many things very intensely. And now that I'm old, I mean, I'm old. I mean, I'm in my 80th year. I'm 79. I think my dad, who was very generous, said, "You're middle-aged until you're 75." So I'm past that. It's a very different relationship to desire, to lust, to wanting, especially people, other people, um, you know, to feeling that intense sexual energy of just really, you just feel like it's got to be met. And it's just very, very intense, powerful force. So, my sense of that, I really think back to what it was like to be young and in the grip of those kinds of feelings, and uh, how we didn't get guidance about how to handle that in our practice from our Asian teachers who didn't discuss it. I don't think it was considered, a respectful thing to discuss. At least my teachers didn't. And I really came to understand through my own interest in this question, um, that sexuality, that kind of wanting, which I think it's important to name and talk about, is something that is just like a powerful force of nature. Like what you were saying earlier, Lisa, it's not about me. It's not personal. Like it's sort of baked into many of us. Not everybody feels, and people feel with different levels of intensity too, according to who they are and their own conditioning and their own bodies and so forth. But I just feel like understanding once again the impersonal nature of these phenomena, like aging, you know, um, like whatever we go through, having hunger, there are reasons, evolutionary, biological, just not always personal. And to come to be able to label the feeling without shame, this is what I'm feeling. I am lusting for either a person or a thing. um, to be able to acknowledge that feeling without shame, and then make a note of it to yourself, and then you work with the how to be present with that, just like any other feeling. And we have lots of methods and techniques and tools in Buddhist psychology and in the mindfulness movement, and we'll be sharing some of those in our retreat.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you both. I really appreciate these very rich answers that both of you provide. It gives so much context, and you kind of move through a couple of different aspects of the question. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think a couple of the things that came out in your answers, one, Lisa, you talking about the felt sense, and then Trudy, you talking about the cycles, right? So I think when I listen to both of those parts of the answers and everything that you provided, there is a discernment that you'll be invited into and kind of sitting with yourself and sitting what's coming up. So I guess what I would ask next would be, and Lisa, you kind of mentioned maybe one or two, but I wonder if there's a particular practice that comes to mind that either both of you would offer in terms of really leaning into feeling into the body, leaning into felt sense, leaning into the sensations that are arising in the body, and how to allow those sensations and what's coming up to be insightful or to be guiding, for you.
Gosh, I think you should come teach this retreat with us, Che. I'm serious. Whoa. You just basically answered your own question. I mean, we're not going to do practices this evening. Our time is limited. It's Rosh
Yeah.
Hashanah. I have to go to the dinner. But that was, I'm so happy that this got recorded, because the way you articulated that question, it really contains the answer, not the specific practices, but this is what the practices are
Yeah.
meant to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so much of it is, is if we are because we're kind of in this retreat, we're kind of giving ourselves permission to actually explore some of these realms that maybe feel taboo. Then we actually start to have some spaciousness, where we can work with this with compassion and presence and mindfulness. We can bring in so many of these Buddhist practices and tools and really use that to become intimate with what's arising in a way that will be hopefully enlightening for us, but I do think that just the very nature of giving ourselves permission to begin to explore this in our practice is where the door starts to open, and then we have the practices that can be that we can use.
Yeah, and I think that the key is, I think the simplest thing I could say is that with wanting, with lust, with any intense feeling or emotion, the practice is to feel it fully, and the support of each other and being in a retreat. It's hard if you haven't been to one, Sandy, to imagine, but you really feel the support of not just the teachers, but the group, because we're all in the same boat. We're practicing together, and everybody's going through their version of the same stuff, basically, feelings that are hard to bear in one way or another. And we learn how to, with the support of the group, of the retreat container and the teachings, um, and the teachers, how to allow ourselves to feel things fully. Because then we encounter the point where impermanence is a friend. When you're feeling something that's difficult, it's a great teaching that everything changes, because it is going to change. And the minute you let yourself fully feel it, it inevitably changes, because everything's constantly changing, but we're just, we're not as present enough to actually experience it moment to moment, usually. So yeah, I think that that's the practice, to feel things fully, to allow them to shift and change. And then you begin to notice not just the life cycles, where you are in your life personally, but you start to notice um, the cycles of experience, how things appear, have their being, and then vanish. And it's a great comfort to notice that and to realize that. Um, Now, when you're riding high on top of the world, it's not as much of a comfort that things are going to change. Um, but we learn to deal with that too.
Yeah.
That last note that you made, Trudy, reminds me of kind of weaving in where both of you have talked about not personalizing things in a way. And there's a practice um, that I know from another teacher in a different lineage and tradition. And part of not personalizing is expressed in the way you two are talking about, where, he articulated it as, if someone gives you a compliment, there's just gratitude expressed. If someone gives you critique, there's just gratitude expressed. You're not moving with the fluctuations of whatever end of the pole that can be on. You just receive it, you take it in, you process it, and you move forward. And you're not, waving so much. You allow it to just be. There's no judgment or anything on it. So those you sharing that piece and that last little bit reminded me of that also. Um, yeah, and something else that you mentioned too, I think it is something that has been so profound to me, to sit retreat and just know what it is to feel other folks in the room. Even though you'll be in noble silence and there's not much happening in terms of verbal exchange or engaging physically with eye contact or otherwise, you'll still feel a lot of connection and a lot of support in the room, just to be in silence and to have other folks there with you in silence.
Yes,
So yeah, it's a great
absolutely.
time. I'm just gonna check in with the folks who are here with us, see if you all have any other questions you would like to ask related to retreat, related to Dharma, or Dharma of Desire specifically for Lisa and Trudy. And I'll give just a moment here, of pause. You're more than welcome to unmute yourself and ask the question, or you're more than welcome to post it in the chat, and I'm happy to read it on your behalf. So I'll just give us just a second here if anyone else has any questions.
I just want to say thank you and good night and Shana Tova. Thank you.
Shana Tova, Shana Tova. Glad
I'll
you were
see
here.
you in Big Bear. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Great. Look forward to seeing you.